Hi, I'm Dave Henning with the Fresh Start podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. And I'm really excited today to have my guest, Trav Bell from Melbourne, Australia. Trav, welcome.
Oh, Dave, stoked to be on. Thanks a lot for having me, man.
And I got to tell you that Trav is actually a surfer and actually has been to Tamarindo, Costa Rica, where we are recording live right now.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to that, he's actually, to my BNI friends back in Palo Alto, he's actually spoken on stage with Dr. Ivan Misner. So, and of course, Dr. Misner, I'm sure, asked for your autograph.
Oh, I'm like, doctor, no more selfies, please. Doctor, get in line, mate. Get in line with everyone else, please.
So you are the bucket list guy, the world's number one bucket list expert and founder and CEO of Certified Bucket List Coach Network, worldwide network. You've actually done some conferences here in San Jose, Costa Rica as well. That is awesome. What in the world is Bucket Listologist? Did you give yourself that name, Trav?
Bucket Listology is an old biblical science that stems back to the. No, I made it up.
You had me there, man. You had me.
Yeah, I did. Biblical science. Where does that? It's not even a thing. Mate, I made it up. Someone said it to me one day. Hey, bucket listology. You're a bucket listologist. I went, that sounds cool. Wrote it down, put it in the intro. Here I am. It's the same as the bucket list guy. Someone called me the bucket list guy, and I literally went home that night after I did my first ever seminar as a speaker. When I started this whole process, I put on a talk, and about 40 people. I nearly had to pay the 40 people to come to that first talk. I was so nervous. This is about 10 years ago, actually, Dave. And I started sharing all the stuff that I'd done in my life, and the fact that I had a list to do before I die, actually written down since I was 18. This is only 10 years ago. I'm 48 now. So when I was 38, I came out of the closet to become the bucket list guy, and a lot of people didn't know that I had this list to do before I die, actually written down since I was 18. Years and years earlier. And then at the end of it inspired the group. And at the end of it, Joe, one of the participants, said, "Hey, how's all this list to do before you die stuff? It's really inspirational. It's like a bucket list. You're like the bucket list guy." I went, ping, light bulb moment, went home and registered the BucketListGuy.com, and I've been doing that for the last 10 years.
That's very cool. And so you have said here, I love what you had to say here, that it's a difference between a business plan or a career plan. It's more of a life plan, because, hey, you're absolutely right. And I hear what you're saying in regard to, we put stuff off that, someday I'd like to do this, someday I'd like to go there. So, and you have this blueprint. What's that all about?
Yeah. I say a bucket list is a tangible life plan where our career plan or our business plan should fit into our life plan and not be the other way around. So it really brings home this work to live principle, because if you ask most people, what are your goals in life? You'll get pay off the house, put the kids through school, do a bit of travel when I'm older. I'm like, and possibly sicker. And so, a lot of people are living by the default, not by intentional design. They're existing and not living. And I want to, my whole mission, Dave, has been to wake people up before they get given a use-by date. Like the movie, The Bucket List, it's a crap movie because it's about two blokes, as we say here in Australia, two blokes that get given a cancer diagnosis and then they write a bucket list. Sorry, too late. That's why it's a crap movie. And I've based my whole career on it. So, but at the end
I've seen that movie. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But the deal is, right, so I did that first seminar on the back of me going through depression. So long story short, I first grew up in a place called Ocean Grove. So I grew up as a surfer, surf lifesaving, pretty much as an athlete, did a physical education degree, started this thing called personal fitness training in the early 90s, was one of the first personal trainers kind of running around Melbourne here in Australia. I was the first to franchise personal training in Australia as well. So I started with one client, ended up with tens of thousands across Australia, a chain of personal training studios. That was my whole identity for 20 years. Tens of thousands of clients, over 2 million personal training sessions, 300 odd personal trainers working under that brand. And that was my first business for 20 years. I always loved helping people. But I went through a bit of a breakdown before breakthrough moment. I think we've all got one of those, haven't we? And
yes.
And so life got on top of me, business things got on top of me. It was a bit of a perfect storm. I won't go into the details, but at the end of the day, toxic people, toxic things going on in the business led me down to a bit of a rabbit hole, a downward spiral in terms of, albeit mild depression. But instead of going on heavy antidepressants, which is kind of like a Band-Aid, right?
Right.
It doesn't really solve the problem. I've had to force myself to learn. I wanted to learn about the psychology, learn about what I was going through at that point in time. So we talked about, off camera, we talked about Tony Robbins. We talked about, all the John Maxwell, all the greats out there. I did, mate, over the course of 2 years there, I did every personal development course that anyone put on. I invested so much money. I've walked on fire, hugged it out and high-fived it with strangers. I've, broken the arrows, bent the bar, went to Burning Man, the whole thing. I did my ayahuasca, and that was not that long ago, so maybe I'm still working through some stuff. But at the end of the day, I learned positive psychology, NLP, life coaching, Akagi principle, law of attraction, all of this stuff. And I worked through a lot, in fact, of my own stuff. But it wasn't until about a year, well, probably a year and a half, 2 years after I sort of started on this mission to find out and discover more about my own psychology, a friend of mine said, Trav, why don't you teach this stuff? And that helped me actually compartmentalize why I was there, and helped me justify how much money I'd spent too. And then I put on this talk, and then at the end of the talk, like I said, I registered the BucketListGuy.com, and in that moment, I knew I defranchised all my whole personal training business, got out of that around that same time. Tim Ferriss came out with his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, and I'm like, I would love to run everything from a freaking hammock in Costa Rica or a hammock in Thailand or a hammock somewhere with a hammock. And but the whole online world, the whole online world was, it's just a given now. But, as you know, back then it was like this revelation, being a digital nomad with no burden of corporate leases and everything else that I had going on, and feeling the weight of all that, to be free, to be able to run around the world. And as the bucket list guy, it was a congruent match to my values. So I'm like, I've got to make something of this. But I registered, defranchised, and then went, okay, what do I do now? And I've been doing that ever since. So there you go.
Yeah. So as you know, the stories are endless. Tony Robbins was living in a 400 square foot apartment at one point way back when, and washing the dishes in his bathtub. And so we all started somewhere, and we all go through this. I call them the seasons of life, the more than 4 seasons. But all that to say, at what point did you connect with TEDx as a thought leader, and how did you get involved with the speaking tours and things like that?
Well, you know what, I in that time that I was watching a lot of speakers. And there was one, it was a sort of a perfect storm, I guess. You might know, you may or may not know, Alan Weiss, this brash New Yorkan out of New Yorkan, and I saw him presented around that time, and he had no whiteboards, no flip charts. He had everyone in tears, everyone crying out of their eyes, on the floor, rolling around, and his ability to hold and capture and get a message across and tell stories. I'm like, this is an art form. This is to be able to do that would be, for me, in that time, would be the ultimate big domino for me to push over in my life that would affect, geometrically affect a lot of other areas of my life. I thought, if I can do that, I can do anything. If I can be a public speaker, where when I grew up, growing up, I'm still pretty introverted, but when I go on stage, it's a different story. But I love, it was my way. Instead of doing one-on-one personal training, it was like one-to-many life coaching, one-to-many coaching. And having been through depression, mental health challenges myself, and seeing as you know now, the rise of depression, suicides, youth suicides, the overprescription of antidepressants, anxiety. We've even got this thing now called the loneliness epidemic. These statistics, disengagement at work, mental health, it's all on the up and up. Then you go through COVID in on top of that, perfect storm for mental health, right? So really what I set about was teaching something that could combat, maybe change the narrative, change some of these statistics to help people be happier, and I'm just going to do it through this sort of filter, this bucket list filter way of making these messages, these personal development messages, more tangible. So for me, I set about this path of, really wanting to help people, and been doing that and doing it for that higher purpose. You know what I mean? And that's what drives me, and I absolutely love doing it. But speaking for me has been the way to do that, first and foremost. But the TED Talk for me was, if you've watched my TED Talk, about 3 minutes, I was so nervous. It was the biggest one in Australia, 2,000 people in front of me. And I run around like an idiot on stage. Being on a 3x3 red dot, man, it's like a cage monkey, and 4 cameras on me. Oh my God. So if you actually watch my TED Talk, at about 4 minutes of the 18 minutes in, I'm drying up, but I ticked it off live in front of 2,000 people. Absolute game changer. But that was on my bucket list, and it really helped my business. It was like as a speaker, becoming a C.S.P, which is a certified speaking professional, doing a TED Talk, being a published author. These are the kind of the things on the speaking bucket list. But over the last 10 years, I get the privilege to get flown around the world, speak at big conferences in some amazing locations. I've spoken on 6 of the 7 continents, speaking on stage with some absolutely amazing people like Ivan, and it's been a hell of a ride.
So I have to ask you this about your first TED Talk where you were so nervous. Was it to your advantage to be wearing brown pants at the time?
Yeah. I should have. I was shitting myself, that's for sure. It was. Mate, when I look back, I look back at it. It's helped my business so much, because you become a thought. It's like the tick to become a thought leader in a certain space, and what I talk about in that is this My Bucket List blueprint. It's what I wrote the book on. And if you're watching, that's the book there, the My Bucket List Blueprint. This is basically what the TED Talk is about. And I went through this process, and it's, it was terrifying to do a TED Talk. And I'm a professional speaker. But the TEDx curator, John Yo for TEDx Melbourne, said, Trav, I don't want you to do your normal shtick of what you do when you're doing keynote. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, you know what I mean. Don't give us the dog and pony show. Don't give us the full presentation thing. It's all about the idea we're spreading, which is the TED ethos. So I want you to dig in a little bit more and get into the real thought leadership about what is the idea that you're trying to get out there in the world. And it really helped me, like unpacking and then repacking it up for TED was a really good way to then further develop the message and go deeper in this. I've always said, go an inch wide and a mile deep. Instead of an inch deep and a mile wide, which is what a lot of people do as experts. So I've gone. I've stayed on that. Pick a highway, then pick a lane, then own that lane. I'm in that bucket list lane, and that's my way to get my thought leadership out there in the world. But the TED thing, big one for a lot of people in their bucket list, and it was terrifying for me, but I'm so stoked I've done it.
Absolutely. So the point is, you did it, and nobody can take that away from you. Number one, but number two, like my mantra is, what did I learn from this? And you've taken that, which was a scary thing, and yet number one, you did it, and number two, you've been learning from it and improving all the way along. So I had this book on my mind about the power of encouragement for a number of years. Couldn't figure it out. Took a 3-day weekend down in San Diego with some like Mike Koenigs and those guys, how to write my book.
Oh, yeah.
And then knocked it out, self-published on Amazon. And ironically, my book hit #1 bestseller in leadership and bumped John Maxwell's 21 Laws book to #2.
Wow.
But that's a moving target, right? So, but nevertheless, I can claim that I am a #1 bestseller on Amazon. It was actually in 3 categories. I sat there the day that it launched and just watched it go up the chart.
Yeah.
I says, I got to get a screenshot like now.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. Yeah.
It's cool, isn't it? Yeah. This went to Amazon bestseller as well, pretty quick. And then when you know what it's like when it hit these different categories, and then you just hope that on that day or on that launch that someone like a John Maxwell or Tony Robbins or someone else isn't putting about a book out in the same category.
Right. Well, I just heard yesterday. I was watching a thing on YouTube or something, and he was talking about if you type in the keyword leadership on I guess on Google or wherever, there's like 257,000 books on leadership. And he was interviewing a guy that he said, why'd you write your leadership book? And he explained the guy named T.D. Jakes was explaining why he wrote this book and made it unique from 257,000 other books. There's a place where we can make a difference, have a voice. Yeah. And what I love what you're doing is you've expanded outside of if you can call it the 4 walls of all your franchises, and you're reaching the world. You have a purpose.
Yeah, well, for me, Dave, I've always had this piece of DNA in me that I'm not happy just helping a handful of people.
Yeah.
I'm not wired that way. I guess that's the confidence that comes with being a professional speaker as well. If you can handle, I reckon the scariest thing, I'm yet to still do this on my bucket list, but is stand-up comedy. So I'm due to do a stand-up comedy gig pretty soon.
Really?
To be honest. Yeah.
I went to the comedy club in Charlotte to sign up for a class, and he discouraged me. He says, "No, you don't want to do that." But I've always wanted.
That's not good, man. So the comedy class guy told you you're not funny.
No, he didn't even hear me. He just said, "I don't think this class."
He just looked at you. He looked at you and said, "You're not a comic."
I just look at my face. Look at my face. It's just a funny face.
That is a sign and a half. If you just walk into a class and they shut you down, that's really you don't. I wouldn't persist on that goal. I would not persist on that goal.
Well, and then you look. I take Rodney Dangerfield as an example. He was a taxi driver until he was 55 years old.
Oh, and, wow, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He didn't even start comedy, and then he got in the golf movie, Bill Murray, and all this.
Yeah. So
see,
he's a taxi driver. Wow.
Look it up, man. There's hope for you on the comedy club thing.
Yeah, I have to wait a few more years.
There's a big documentary on Netflix Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld. I interviewed Jerry.
Yeah.
I interviewed the guy to put Jerry into syndication, who was one of my interviews a couple years ago. But Jerry did a Netflix show. He went back to the comedy club where he first started, and
Yep.
he actually repeated the first jokes that he ever wrote. And it's a
Oh,
really
wow.
it's about a 1 hour documentary, and
I'm
he
gonna watch that.
yeah, it was fantastic. It's in New York City. That's the very club that he's tried out at, and with all the other young comics. Jay Leno was there in different ones over. Yeah. So check it
But
out.
not, but not you. But not you, because your dreams have been cut short.
Oh, there's plenty of time, brother. I'm not giving up. It's persistent.
Yes. I love that.
Persistence jokes.
So when they say you got a head for radio, they weren't.
Yeah, exactly. You got a face for radio. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's an insult. I don't care. Who cares? I just don't care.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's it. Oh, mate, the whole stand-up comedy thing. Yeah. So I guess that's the thing. Like, when as a speaker, I reckon the holy grail is when you can get up, speak from your heart, have those big aha, crowd ahas, and you don't care. After a while, you just don't care how many people are in the audience. You don't care who the audience is. Not to say that you get totally relaxed, but and me, if you watch my TED talk, I had a mohawk in that.
Yes, I saw that.
And so I got that, and please bleep this out if you have to, but that was my fuck you 40 haircut. So when I turned 40, I got a mohawk. And so, and I've got tattoos and, other bits and pieces going on. And
yeah,
when you can be the full expression of yourself, I don't think there is any, that's a congruent life. I think of one story. I went into, the Australian Securities and Investment Commission. Now that sounds like a big bureaucracy, and it is. That's if you register a company in Australia, you do it through ASIC, ASIC, Australian Investment Security Commission. So if you go and register an LLC in America, they'd have the same kind of body to be able to do that with. So these guys and girls up in Sydney, at their head office in Sydney, they're all nerds. They all love bureaucracy. They all paper pushers. And the risk management division of ASIC actually got me in to do a speech for them. So I'm at the risk management division of probably Australia's biggest nerds, and here I am in their Sydney head office with a mohawk, with t-shirt, with tats, jeans, and I think I had runners on, and that's what I speak in, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just had that moment where, what the hell? So why have they got me in there? I'm talking about bucket list, and these guys, they work hard, play hard, and I don't think they play that hard, but they work hard. But at the end of the day, I've told this to other speakers, we get paid, a speaker or a thought leader gets paid for their contrarian view. They get paid for your value is in being different. Your value is in having a different outlook on life, or a bit different perspective that you can offer up to them for them to maybe map parts of it into their life. And so that's why I was there. That's why I think, to your listeners and watchers, it's very important to be yourself. Very important to be authentic and vulnerable in yourself as well, because that's where the money is. That's where the value is. The value is not in you being a sheeple. The value in you is not being vanilla. The value in you is being absolutely congruent with who you are, so you can speak the truth and wear your heart on your sleeve, and hopefully you can orate a message out there in the world that people pick up and then, map into their own lives too. So over time, you build up this muscle this congruency muscle, I think, and the bucket list guy for me is certainly that. It's a reflection of who I am. There is no difference between that guy who stands up on stage and me here, you know, or me just in normal life. And I think that's the holy grail, right?
Oh, yeah. So that really kind of explains why a bucket list is so important. And you actually also related it to working through mental health issues, which has been you just scratched the surface on that, pal. So tell me some of your best bucket list stories.
We talked about Tim Ferriss before. I've had lunch with Tim Ferriss. When he came to Australia, I stalked him hard enough but I had lunch with Tim. You know, I wanted to meet the guy, number one, and then two, I had the opportunity to have lunch with him, which was great. So that was a big one. You know, Burning Man, ayahuasca ceremony. I'm just thinking of Costa Rica now. You know, seeing I'm nearly at the 7 man-made wonders of the world, nearly. Things like, you know, bucket list coach, because we've got bucket list coaches, certified bucket list coach network now in 22 countries around the world, of which I'm founder CEO of. And that's a legacy play, that one. That's to change the conversation and get these personal development tools out there in the world, these positive psychology tools out there in the world. You know, we've got bucket list coaches in countries where if you actually translate the word bucket list, it makes no freaking sense at all, but they still get it. Yeah. So that's a legacy thing. I'm not very materialistic. I'm quite minimalistic. So I don't have a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of travel with my dad. I'm adopted, and there's a whole other story there. But, you know, Dad and I have done a lot of, he's like my adopted dad, he's like a worker's worker, you know, he's a wharfie, he's a mechanic. Me, his adopted son, a serial entrepreneur. I don't think he still understands what the hell I do, but, you know, different languages, different DNA, I guess. So we didn't exactly get along, if you know what I mean, growing up.
Sure.
Until we did a big hike one day, which was on my list to do before I die, and before a bucket list. And over that, we bonded. And then from there, we went through to Mount Everest Base Camp through Tibet with a full-on expedition team who were going to the top of Everest. We went to Advanced Base Camp on the Tibetan side, which is the highest place in the world. Advanced Base Camp, 6,500 meters. Don't know what that is in feet. That's the highest place in the world that you can go without putting on crampons and getting on the rope and the ice axes and that sort of thing. So we've done that together. We did Mount Kilimanjaro together in Africa. And this is a 65-year-old man, you know, he's now 75. Kilimanjaro was only a few years ago. We've done Papua New Guinea and the Kokoda track, which is like an Australian war, you know, trail. Celebrated Anzac Day over in Papua New Guinea as well. We did Machu Picchu after doing the Inca Trail. And on some of these adventures, I took some other bucket listers with me. So I celebrated my 40th birthday at Machu Picchu and had Dad there. So Dad's been with me, you know, because of my bucket list. Dad and I are now best mates.
That is awesome. That is really awesome. And I'm speaking with Trav Bell. He's the bucket list guy. And Trav, man, time flies when you're having fun. Wow. We've really covered a lot of stuff, and we could go a lot deeper and a lot longer, but out of respect for people's short attention span, we kind of wrap it up here. But how can I help you? What is the best website that I can get people to get access and find your book? It's on Amazon, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Thank you, David. Yeah, thanks, Heath, for having me on the show too, mate. Probably the best thing, here's what I want people to do. You know, like you and I, we do a lot of these interviews, right? And rather than listening and or watching this right now, here's what I want people to actually do, right? Some real action steps. Not just, I don't care if you follow me. I really don't care, all right? But I want you to do something, all right? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to either watch my TED Talk, right, or grab a book, sure, thebucketlistguy.com/book, and you can buy a book, a signed book, and I'll sign it and send it over to you wherever you are in the world. Or you can go on Amazon. A bit hard to sign that one. But either way, this thing is written like a guidebook to help you actually write a bucket list, rather than just think about it. Because right now, your bucket list, well, most people's bucket list is up there with their daily to-do list. And guess which one gets done first on a day-to-day basis, right? But it's not until something traumatic happens to you or a loved one, then suddenly you reprioritize in a heartbeat. So I want people to use this thing, to use the TED Talk and actually write some stuff down. Remember this? Remember these things?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes.
What is that, mate? What is that?
It looks like a pencil from here.
All right. And what's this stuff? What's this stuff here?
Oh, that's like paper. Where'd that come from?
I know. It does this thing. BC. It does this thing called... Humour me, people. Humour me. I mean, it does this thing called writing. I know, so analog. And and I want you to write your bucket list. Use the My Bucket List Blueprint, a 12-letter acronym. It's like AA. It's a 12-step program, and what it does is help you unpack and articulate a personally meaningful and holistic bucket list. It's not what you think. It's not all about travel. Travel is only one of the 12 steps, but it'll help you unpack this bucket list of yours. Don't compare yourself. Don't worry about how you're going to put it together. Just worry about the what and the why and write this stuff down. But what's easy to do is easy not to do, right? So all I want you to do is write it down and then send it to me, trav@thebucketlistguy.com. Literally send me your bucket list. I want to make you accountable to this thing as well. So write it down, get it out of your head, maybe for the first time. If you've got one already, send it to me. Use the blueprint to help you unpack it. Write it down and send it to me. So there you go. I want people to take action, mate.
So it could be, we talk about travel and all the glamour of that, but it could be something, for example, and correct me if I'm wrong, it could be something as simple as forgiving somebody or asking forgiveness or repairing a relationship like you had with your stepfather, and just, the relationships, in my opinion, are a big deal.
Yeah, 100%. And but this is not just about ticking a whole bunch of cool stuff off. This is really about how we reverse engineer every aspect of their lives in order to make this stuff come to fruition. It's the growth of us on this journey towards these self-imposed destinations. But Dave, most importantly, it's about the person that exists on the other side. And that's the person that we do not know yet. That's our potential. People are dying at 40 and being buried at 80.
Wow, that's profound. That is very profound.
They give up. We know them. We've done that ourselves to a certain extent. We oscillate between the positive and the negative, the victor and the victim. But I want people to get curiously excited about what's on the other side of your bucket list. There's a you that you don't know yet, and that's what life is all about. That is the human experience. Keep adding stuff to your bucket list until you die.
That's fantastic. Now, I'm wrapping up my time here. It's gone so fast.
Sure.
So we're going to help you out. We're going to get the word out. And also, if you watched any of my podcasts, you know this question is coming up. What was your very first job you had when you were a kid?
Me? I delivered pamphlets, plus me and my friend, because we were surfers, and there's a golf course, local golf course. What we actually did, we were quite the entrepreneurial bunch. I did crush cans, like aluminium cans, and sold those. But what we used to do is get in our wetsuits, especially on weekends and after schools, and go and find golf balls that the golfers had hid into rivers and the little dams and lakes and this sort of thing, and into the bushes, and we go and collect golf balls and then resell them to the golfers.
I'm a golfer, so I've bought my golf balls back many times, actually.
Yeah. Sometimes we even grab the ones you just hit and then sold it back to you. No.
Yeah, they know what they're looking for me when I go golfing for sure. So, Trav, we're talking with Trav Bell from Melbourne, Australia, and what a great time, man! Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. I'm Dave Henning with the Fresh Start Podcast. Fresh ideas for business and personal growth. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, man.